bunny, 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 bunny. Bunny. Today, I wanted to share the unsettling world of Mona Awad's 2019 novel, Bunny. This book offers commentary on the dark corners of academia via a twisted fairy tale wrapped in pastel pink. It's a book that earned praise from Vogue, the New York Public Library, and Time as one of the best of 2019. Awad is a graduate of Brown University's Literary Arts program and knows this world of academia innately. She holds nothing back in her critique of creative writing and elite institutions. At its core, Bunny employs a cocktail of mean girl tropes and magical realism to expose the fantastical dramas that fester in our supposedly elite spaces. It addresses themes like duality and the fine lines between reality, fantasy, and art. So, settle in, because this rabbit hole goes far deeper than you might expect. Our story unfolds within the halls of Warren University. If you're familiar with the campus novel genre, such as Donna Tartt's The Secret History, you'll recognize the satirical undercuts right away. Warren is a place that, ironically, seems to stifle creativity rather than cultivate it. Our protagonist, Samantha Heather Mackey, a 25-year-old MFA student in creative writing, finds herself constantly struggling to write here, a stark contrast to her childhood where stories flowed freely. The central hub of this academic purgatory is the fiction workshop, held in a windowless, clockless room known only as the Cave. This isn't any classroom. It's a deliberate nod to Plato's allegory of the cave, where those in darkness lack a firm grasp on reality. And in Bunny, this couldn't be more fitting. Few characters, including Samantha, possess a clear view of what's real and what's fantasy. They exist in a surreal space, constantly creating dubious realities, somewhat like the prisoners in Socrates' allegory. It's a terrifyingly apt metaphor for an institution that, rather than enlightening, seems to plunge its inhabitants deeper into a shared delusion. The inhabitants of Warren University are as peculiar as the institution itself. Let's meet our ensemble. We will dive into the plot soon, but I think it's best to introduce the characters first. First is Samantha Heather Mackey. Samantha is our entry point into this madness. She is an outsider from the start, a traditional fiction writer in a department seemingly obsessed with experimental, boundary-pushing writing. Her defining characteristic, at least initially, is her resistance to the dominant clique called Bunny. She defines herself by who she isn't, who is not a bunny, and who will never be a bunny. This staunch nonconformity, however, is a fascinating red herring, as we'll soon discover. Samantha is vulnerable, often defining herself in relation to others, and not quite ready to face the world alone. Her internal struggle for a stable identity, her attempt to separate the chorus in her head from her own voice, becomes a central conflict. And that clique we just mentioned, the Bunnies, a confection of cuteness, sex, and violence. It consists of Kira, Caroline, Victoria, and Eleanor, or as Samantha renames them in her mind, Creepy Doll, Cupcake, Vignette, and the Duchess. They are the powerful, inseparable clique of mean girls who dominate the narrative arts department. Awad repeats the word bunny 9 times in the opening pages, immediately establishing their overwhelming, almost tyrannical presence. They are a bizarre fusion, seemingly innocent, yet disturbingly violent and overtly sexual. They move as one. Their voice is italicized in Samantha's mind, a constant chorus of Bunny, I love you, and I love you, Bunny, blurring their individual identities into a singular, oppressive force. They are, quote, beautiful, murderous children in horror films, a comparison that proves disturbingly accurate as the story unfolds. Caroline, otherwise known as Cupcake, dresses and even smells like a cupcake, writing, quote, post-feminist dialogues with kitchen appliances. She embodies the sweet exterior of the clique. Kira, known as Creepy Doll, has Shirley Temple curls but a voice like a child in a scary movie. She writes dark fairy tales about wolf princes and demon girls, personifying the creepy aspect of their cuteness. Victoria, Vignette, with a punk aesthetic and a FU eyes, she pens stories of Disney princesses and bloody orgies. And finally, Eleanor, the Duchess, is a gaudy moon princess who writes puzzling proems on panes of glass with a diamond. She represents the pretentiousness and performative nature of the group. Individually, they are caricatures. Collectively, they are a tyranny that seeks to consume Samantha's very identity. But standing in stark contrast to the bunnies is Ava, Samantha's fiercely nonconformist best friend. Ava works in a nature lab with dead bugs, dropped out of an elite art school, and delights in disrupting Warren student tours by loudly proclaiming that people on campus chop off heads with an axe. She is a rebel, an outsider with David Bowie eyes, embodying transgression and an unwavering contempt for authority. Ava calls Samantha Smacky, a nickname that, like the bunnies, Bunny, highlights the theme of multiple shifting identities within the story. Ava provides a vital anchor to a semblance of reality for Samantha, pulling her away from the clique, even if only temporarily. She becomes a mother figure to Samantha, enabling her to write again away from the toxic environment of Warren. Central to the novel's magical realism are the drafts. Drafts are not just characters. They are literal manifestation of the bunnies and Samantha's artistic and pop cultural desires. The process of their creation is gruesome. A rabbit explodes, and from the gore, a handsome young man emerges. They are called drafts, darlings, hybrids, so on, a direct comparison to creating art or writing itself. If a draft doesn't work out, they are beheaded without a second thought. This ritualistic violence underscores the ruthlessness of creation and the brutal editing process. Two other central characters are Jonah and Max. Jonah is an amicable poetry student, and an outsider like Samantha, ostracized by the bunnies, who call him, quote, Psycho Jonah. He is one of the few genuine human connections Samantha makes at Warren, a stark contrast to the fabricated drafts. And then there is Max, a draft. Samantha inadvertently created Max from a stag. He is a product of her own desires and insecurities, even quoting things Samantha wrote in her notebook. Max's emergence from a larger, wilder animal alludes to the idea that true art requires risk, something harmless rabbits cannot produce. He acts as Samantha's foil, eventually doing what she cannot, exacting vengeance on the bunnies. Even the faculty at Warren are not spared the satire. Fosco is the fiction workshop teacher, whom Samantha names Fosco after a villain in a gothic novel, contrasting sharply with the bunny's nickname for her, Care, suggesting a Care Bear. Fosco represents the satirical, sometimes insipid, creative writing professor, though she's capable of critiquing the bunny's work. Alan is Samantha's thesis advisor. He is also known as the Lion, and despite his predatory name, he is not a true antagonist. Their awkward relationship stems from Samantha's past oversharing, highlighting themes of boundaries and appropriate distance in mentorship. Now let's dive into the plot of Bunny, a spiraling descent into a fantastic, often terrifying, reality. Samantha's journey into the bunny's world begins with a deceptively cutesy invitation to their smut salon. Despite Ava's warnings and Samantha's initial disdain, she attends. The salon is a performance of dramatic readings of erotic works. Samantha, pressured to perform, tells a fabricated story about a high school crush, Rob, exaggerating a death scene into a scandalous sexual encounter. This moment is critical. It's Samantha's first real step into embracing the bunny's world of performative art and blurred lines. The bunnies then insist she, quote, catch a bunny, an assignment Samantha initially does not understand. The weirdness escalates at the bunny's prom night party. Four attractive, pompous young men, later revealed as drafts, dance with the bunnies. Then, Rob, Samantha's high school crush, appears, seemingly confessing his love. But this reunion takes a horrifying turn as Rob, like the other drafts, begins to chew on Samantha's wrists, then launches into an abusive monologue before his head violently explodes. This explosion is Samantha's introduction to the bunny's dark secret. They create these young men, or drafts, from actual rabbits, literally manifesting their desires. If a draft doesn't meet their expectations, they simply behead it with an axe and make a new one. The act is presented as a form of artistic creation, a parallel to writing itself. Following Rob's grotesque demise, Samantha is pulled deeper into the clique. She wakes up at Kira's house, where the bunnies attempt to gaslight her, claiming that Rob's head never exploded. Yet, Kira eventually confesses that it did. The bunnies then invite Samantha into their project, an experimental, intertextual, and performative work about, quote, the body, a hybrid creation that directly mirrors their own collective identity. Samantha is drawn in, losing her individual identity. The narrator voice shifts from I to we when she joins the bunnies, symbolizing how completely the clique consumes her. She is no longer Samantha, she is simply Bunny. As winter break approaches, Samantha's integration into the bunnies begins to cool. She becomes sick and sad, unable to write, a direct consequence of her immersion in their toxic world. She hints at an uncomfortable past with her thesis advisor, the lion, born from an overshare, adding to her isolation. It's during this time that Samantha encounters Max, a draft she inadvertently created from a stag. His creation from a stag, a larger and wilder animal than a rabbit, suggests a more significant, perhaps dangerous, form of artistic risk. Max leads Samantha back to Ava, her much-needed anchor to reality. In Ava's home, away from Warren University, Samantha is finally able to write again. However, Max, being Samantha's draft, echoes her own thoughts and writings, and soon, Ava and Max become romantically involved, disrupting Samantha's newfound peace. Samantha discovers that the bunnies are obsessed with Max, sending him provocative text messages. The bunnies' desperation culminates in a scary, fantastical thesis meeting, where they, or the illusions of them, tie Samantha up in the cave. A weary janitor, a symbol of grounding reality, frees her, advising her to face the real world. Later on, Max appears at Ava's home with a bloody swan, revealing a horrific truth. Ava is dead, killed by the bunnies. But here's the twist. Ava wasn't a real woman to begin with. Samantha, lonely and isolated, had created Ava from a swan on a bench by a pond, much like the bunnies created their drafts. This revelation shatters Samantha's understanding of reality, reinforcing the novel's central theme of blurred lines. Max, consumed by a desire for revenge, grabs an axe to go after the bunnies. Samantha stops him, leading to a final, sassy confrontation with the bunnies. They mock Ava's death, accusing Samantha of being unable to tell the difference between reality and illusion. This is deeply ironic, as the bunnies themselves demonstrate their own tenuous grasp on reality by fawning over Max like he's a world-famous star, and transforming into a, quote, single squid monster of pink flesh and black silk whose tentacles have turned on each other during their frenzied pursuit of him. In a desperate act of agency, Samantha herself beheads Max, and he reverts back to a stag. This act frees her from his influence and symbolically destroys the man of the bunnies' dreams. At graduation, the bunnies appear injured from their obsessive pursuit of Max. Samantha, however, finds a measure of peace. She patches things up with the lion and, crucially, solidifies her friendship with Jonah, the only real person among her acquaintances who didn't start as a magical creature. In the ending, with Samantha befriending Jonah and even ditching the graduation party to, quote, sit on the roof and celebrate with the raccoon priests, asserts the importance of owning one's truth and embracing one's own, unique reality, however fantastical it may seem to others. She gains agency and the prospect of a future as a writer, finally standing on her own. Now, beyond the shocking plot and surreal events, Bunny is a deeply thematic novel, probing the nature of identity, creation, and perception. The concept of duality or hybridity permeates every aspect of Bunny. Characters are a mixture of things, often possessing multiple names that make them seem composed of different parts. Samantha herself is a hybrid, a writer whose reality constantly blurs with fantasy. The bunnies are hybrids of cuteness, sexuality, and violence. The drafts are the ultimate hybrids, part human, part animal, part artistic creation. This suggests that in Awad's world, and perhaps in the creative process itself, nothing is ever truly pure or singular. Everything is a blend, a mashup of influences and desires. The chorus and constant voices in Samantha's head is a critical theme to the book. They reflect Samantha's struggle with identity and her search for herself. These aren't just external voices, like the bunny's incessant "Bunny, I love you." These are internal monologues, the nagging doubts, the echoes of others' opinions that shape Samantha's perception of herself and her art. This theme speaks to the overwhelming influence of external validation, especially in an environment like a Masters of Fine Arts program, where critiques and the opinions of others can easily drown out one's own creative voice. Samantha's ultimate challenge is to separate this internal chorus from her authentic voice. And perhaps the most compelling theme is the porous boundary between reality, fantasy, and art. In Bunny, fantasies literally become reality through the creation of drafts. These bunnies, ironically, believe they grasp reality, lecturing Samantha that, quote, "a true artist knows the difference. I remember learning that that's actually the difference between an actual artist and, like, an insane person, you know," unquote. Yet their apparent actions betray their own delusion as they chase after Max as if he were a flesh and blood celebrity. The novel argues that reality itself is subjective, a product of individual experiences and personality. Samantha's world, with its raccoon priests, is no less real than the janitor's more grounded view. The book's ending reinforces that trying to adopt someone else's reality, as Samantha initially does with the bunnies, leads to a loss of self. True liberation comes from embracing one's own truth and constructing a reality that aligns with it. Beyond being a mean girl clique, the bunnies are potent symbols of power and oppression. Their ability to take over the story, compelling Samantha's attention and consuming her identity, speaks to the near totalitarian influence they have. They embody a shattered feminist illusion. Despite their use of feminist rhetoric and claims of an, quote, all-female fiction cohort, unquote, their actions, creating men to reduce them to their bodies, seeking external validation, and elevating themselves above others, ironically undercut core feminist tenets. Their collective identity, becoming a, quote, single squid monster at the end, highlights their tyrannical nature and eventual self-destruction as their individual parts turn in on each other. The novel also has references to plenty of other books, movies, songs, and artists. These cultural products and figures act as powerful symbols of identity, allowing Awad to characterize individuals and illustrate their desires. Ava's, quote, David Bowie eyes, unquote, immediately mark her as a transgressive rebel. Each bunny has specific cultural references that highlight their nuanced but collective traits. Cupcake's, quote, Christopher Robin cardigan points to her childish aesthetic and controlling nature, like Christopher Robin controlling the 100-acre wood animals. Creepy Doll's Shirley Temple curls reinforce the performative, juvenile cuteness. Vignette's association with Disney princesses and Samuel Bucket perfectly captures her blend of girlish tropes with the absurd. The Duchess, as a C-list moon goddess, speaks to the group's contrived aspects. Even the drafts are named after cultural figures, all reflecting the bunny's idealized male desires. Max's own array of nicknames, from Hud to Icarus, symbolizes the various roles he fills and foreshadows his tragic downfall. Now let's talk some more about the drafts. The drafts are not just bizarre creations. They are literal embodiment of the creative process. Their very existence underscores the novel's critique of art as a product, often a violent and disposable one. The ease with which the bunnies behead failed drafts highlights the ruthless editing and rejection inherent in creative work. The drafts also represent the power an artist wields over their creations, the ability to bring them to life, imbue them with meaning, and ultimately destroy them. Their fragility, and the bunny's obsession with them, reveals a commentary on how art can become a narcissistic pursuit, valued not for its intrinsic merit, but for its ability to reflect the artist's desires. Bunny is a novel that clings to you, unsettling and provoking long after the final page. Mona Awad masterfully blends satire, horror, and magical realism to craft a profound commentary on the dangers of toxic cliques. She also comments on the subjective nature of reality and the often brutal demands of artistic creation within the competitive world of academia. It's a story that asks us to consider what happens when our desire to belong consumes our identity. How do we distinguish between genuine artistic pursuit and narcissistic indulgence? And in a world where fantasy can become real, how do we ever know what's true? Bunny is a challenging, uncomfortable, yet ultimately rewarding read that compels us to look closer at the rabbit holes we might fall into, whether it's in our creative pursuits or our social lives. It's a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous monsters wear pastel colors and whisper, "Bunny, I love you." Thank you for joining me in this exploration of Bunny. What are your thoughts on the novel? Let me know in the comments below.